This is James Taylor, and you're listening to The Creative Life. The Creative Life podcast is a show created for you, the creative. If you're looking for inspiration, motivation, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's a musician, writer, artist, designer, performer, educator, or creative entrepreneur. They share their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, their insights, and much, much more. In this episode, I speak with entrepreneur, writer, and speaker Dale Callahan, and we talk about finding your calling, the role of the intrapreneur, and building a company of one. Enjoy the episode. Hey, it's James Taylor, and I'm delighted today to have my guest, Dale Callahan. Dale is an entrepreneur, coach, and speaker who helps people break out of the corporate rut by becoming a company of one. His mission is to help others find freedom in their life and work while building their own businesses. As well as his role as an entrepreneur and coach, Dale is also a university faculty member at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, where he leads the graduate program in information engineering and management. He also has an awesome online course on building your own business called Building Your Own Business. And we're going to cover that and many more things beside in the interview today. So Dale, welcome to the show.
Hey, James, thanks so much for having me.
So share with our listeners what's going on in your world just now.
Well, I am about to. We're just finishing summer. I'm a university faculty member, and oddly enough, because I work with professionals, the summer is a busy time for us as opposed to the typical. So we're kind of rounding out that and kicking into the fall. And I'm just now, at the same time, because I like to do everything at the same time just to make myself crazy. I'm just completing the Building Your Own Business, the initial launch where we're starting coaching with the clients and everything tonight. So been busy.
Fantastic. And so you were saying that there's a kind of a different pace that goes on from the kind of university life as opposed to your life as a coach and a speaker. Do these things manage to blend well? Are you able to kind of do these same things, or do you get the occasional crash where you can things all happen at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously the occasional crash, but they blend so well because they're so similar in terms of what I do. And I have a lot of flexibility on both sides of setting my schedule, which is a great blessing. And, it's also a curse because that means I have to plan better. And I don't always do that. So usually the crashes come by my own hand, just poor planning on my part.
And so you're training as part of the university, you're training the kind of next generation of engineers. And you had an interesting kind of transition. You were obviously an engineer yourself initially with a very well-known US kind of company. And then you had that transition, or you were kind of promoted up from being a technician, being the engineer, into being a manager. Could you maybe just talk about that process from your own background?
Yeah, I mean, I'd spent quite a few years in a large, very large company, and and I was a technical grunt, had nobody working for me, and then find myself managed into that. But a lot of my leadership, quote unquote, came from when I left that company, I was found myself actually running some companies, and I was in the world of telecom, so I found myself running telecom companies. So that transition's a tough game, though. Anytime you move from the doer to the leader, and there's a lot of, I work with a lot of people, and that's what they're doing. They're doing that transition point in their life, and it's a place of lots of opportunity and to crash and burn, as well as to thrive.
So people like Michael E. Gerber and Buzz E-Myth talk about these different roles of the technician and the manager and the entrepreneur. So what kind of tips do you usually give people that are making that switch from they've been a technician either in a company, or they've been very much a kind of craftsperson, what they're doing, and now they're having to manage other people, manage teams of people? What are some of the common things that you tell them to kind of look out for and be cognizant of?
Well, the one thing is realize that those people are people. Just like you were, and it's weird when we get into leadership roles. Oftentimes we take this, I'm now in charge, and you got to listen to me, dadgummit, and those kind of mental attitudes. And what I'm trying, obviously, what people want is they want to be respected, they want to have autonomy, they want to, and as a leader, as you're walking away from the expert, you kind of have to let go of your expertise. And especially, I mean, you just imagine if you're really, really good at something and now you're bringing in people underneath you that are, or you're managing people that are doing the same thing. It's tough for you not to just reach in there and say, let me show you how to do it, or let me do it for you. And just stepping back and realizing you have a different role, and treating, I mean, to me, the world's worst thing to work for is the micromanager. And there's probably some people who thrive under that, but I don't know who they are. I've never met them.
It's like I was speaking to a sommelier the other day who's in Napa, and he said like the worst person to work from is the owner chef. Because they're the technician, but they're also the boss as well. And these are the worst person.
It's a disaster in so many ways. I mean, I know one company that's right around me that their vice president over software development, which has probably as many as 20 or 30 developers for him. He closes his door and writes all the code himself. And they're left with nothing to do, and that sounds great, hey, I got nothing to do, but it's very demotivating. And he's been doing that for years, and so it's a poor use of the company's money. People leave as soon as they can because they've really got nothing to do. It's a tough animal.
And the people that you're coaching, some of them, I imagine they're coming from the corporate world into wanting to start up their own thing, the company of one. Maybe there's other people who are kind of in that they've already had their own business and they're looking to grow it in different ways. Is there much of a difference when you're dealing with different kind of age groups, the person, the entrepreneur who is the millennial kind of style entrepreneur, or the one that's maybe is worked in corporate America, or worked in corporations and is coming now to being an entrepreneur at the age of 50 or 60?
Yeah, there is a dramatic difference. I mean, at the university, most of the people we're working with are corporate people by definition. And that's who I tend to work with even on my own consulting and things from a different level. But the person who's been in the corporate world, I don't care where, I don't even care what country I've noticed, because we have a lot of people coming from India over here. I call it the corporate lobotomy. I mean, they're numb. They can't imagine doing anything. I was talking to somebody just yesterday, just Friday, and they were saying, and this was a well-paid individual making well over six figures in the United States. And they were saying just the thought of somebody paying them $2,000 for something they do that's outside of a paycheck is unfathomable. They can't imagine them having that much value. And I'm thinking, somebody's paying you over $180,000 right now. I mean, they just get so disconnected. The younger people tend to be, or people coming from different countries. I've also noticed this. They come from lesser developed countries. They tend to be less tied to the paycheck. They tend to be more willing to try some things. They tend to like their freedom better because they haven't been entrenched for so long. So it's a tough road moving after you've been in the corporate world for a while, and not because the work's hard, because there's the mental attitude that's difficult to get out of.
I suppose in America there's been, I think I saw a stat the other day. I think it was in the 1800s. Only about 1% of people actually worked for someone. Everyone was basically an entrepreneur, whether you'd call it an entrepreneur or something else at that point. But everyone basically worked for themselves. And then obviously, industrialization and the 20s and 30s, people kind of worked for many more kind of big corporations. Do you get a sense that, because you're dealing with large companies all the time and executives within those large companies, are you getting a sense that that balance is shifting, so people are starting to think of themselves almost as internal contractors and consultants and like intrapreneurs within organizations?
I hope so. I mean, that's something we really pound in people's head. And as a matter of fact, at the university, one of the things we do is we have a course where we call it Company of One, or that's its running name, where we look at, you're working for a large company X, Y, and Z. You need to figure out how much value you are adding to the company in dollars, and we have them go through this process. We have them identify their internal customers. We try to have them identify their pain points and develop marketing messages. Exactly the same thing that we would be doing for an individual startup or a medium-sized company. or yeah, I mean, it's because it's the same thing. I'm working, I'm serving someone, and I'm getting paid. It doesn't matter whether I'm an individual going out there providing some service or whether I'm showing up at a Fortune 100 company. It's the same thing. I see that people's eyes click and they recognize that to be true, but buying it at the heart level is a tougher thing. I do, on the other side, I do recognize that the companies look at us that way. They see us as just contractors. We're just, what value are you adding today? I mean, I've recently run into a CEO of a medium-sized company. She had a spreadsheet that had every employee's name and then had their salary in a column and then another column, the value they brought to the company, and subtracted it. And these weren't salespeople, so these may be tech support people or something. So she was measuring value the best way she could, and basically looking at them like an asset. Are you bringing value, or do I need to shed you and get another asset?
So this, I know there's been a number of books out about this. I interviewed a while back one of the board members of Yahoo, which has now been actually acquired as well. And I've forgotten his name, Maynard Webb is the gentleman's name, and he had a book came out about this where essentially everyone needs to think of them me Inc. essentially.
Yes.
If you're in an organization, you're talking about company of one. Whether you're in a large organization or it's just you, or you're entrepreneur, or your middle management, wherever you are, you need to be kind of developing that. Not just being really good at great at your job, but also showing your worth, showing the value that you're adding to the organization. So. What kind of tips and tools do you give either people that come to the university, they're doing the program there, or you're coaching to kind of help them show their worth? I imagine it must be quite difficult in a large company to kind of quantify that when there's a lot of complexity there.
It can be challenging because oftentimes we're working for multiple people. It's not just my boss. It's multiple people I have to satisfy. But one of the first things we have them do is identify their customers. Who are the people that, and we try to define customers very carefully, the people that impact the flow of money to you. So let's say I work for AT&T, and I'm a software developer. My customer is not the people out there writing checks to AT&T. And my customer are the people who are writing checks to me. And that's a different mentality. So, the first thing we do is try to get them to define who is it that's inside their company that can fire them, can give them pay raises, can get them fired. And it may be a boss, it may be the boss's boss, it may be a peer, and usually there's as many as 10 people that are your kind of sphere of influence that you really need to keep happy. So first of all, identifying those people, and then we have them try to go to those people individually and chat with them and say, hey, I look at you as my customer. Let me talk about how I'm serving you. What do I do that adds value? And just begin having conversations with them to learn, what do they really care about? What am I doing that they care about? And it's the conversations are bizarre because so often we think we know, but when they go have conversations, there's all these assumptions. Mm-hmm. There's things my boss thinks I'm doing that I'm not, and there's things I'm doing that I think he or she is aware of that they're not, and so often we're spending a lot of time doing things that are not of value, and we're some of the things that we could make us take very small amounts of time would add tremendous value. So just identifying and communicating constantly with your customers is a huge change of scope for most of these people.
And for your own role as a coach and a speaker, where do you go to get your ideas? Where do you go for inspiration? And then how do you go about kind of developing these ideas either into a talk or into the products that you sell?
Well, I make a lot of mistakes, so that's always useful. I read a lot. Or I consume a lot of books, whether I read them or not. I read a lot of books. I'm in mastermind groups with peers, and I'm constantly engaging with people. And I'm fortunate in the sense that the clients that I work with bring tremendous levels of experience. and they have tremendous backstories, so I learn a lot from just experimenting with them and hearing their stories and being able to coach them through it. But also they have experiences that they can bring and say, this worked for me. So it's, you never stop learning. It's just a constant game of gathering new information, gathering new stories, and understanding more clearly how these things work. And yet at the same time, the principles that seem to work are less and less complex. It's always going back to the very simple basic steps of serving other people and communicating how well you serve them.
And when you made that journey yourself from working in a corporate environment to being an entrepreneur, being that kind of company of one and serving, maybe a different type of group as well, what was holding you back from making that jump? Because I know there's probably a lot of people listening to just now that working 9-to-5 job, maybe they enjoy the work they're doing, but it's not 100% fulfilling them in what they want to do, or they want something else from their life. What was holding you back in making that jump?
I think you can't say it any other way but fear. As a matter of fact, I was helped, like so many people are, as we went through a downsizing. We can call it whatever we want, but I got fired. Give it as many nice names as you want, but we're doing all this corporate restructure, and I was one of them that was I was voted least likely to succeed, if you will. And so, it was this, and they did this thing. They say, hey, we will pay you a year's salary to leave. So it was a great thing. It was depressing, utterly soul crushing in one sense, and utterly freeing in the other sense. It was. Yeah, and I always liken it to, when your high school girlfriend breaks up with you. It's like, it's devastating and wow, it's freeing at the same time. I felt like I was grabbing that cash and running to the front door as fast as I could. And I was running out of fear. And the fear was, as I looked around me, nobody ever left that company. Most people didn't like working there, but they never left. And I just realized, if I don't leave now, under any circumstances, I won't. And so it was the best thing they ever did for me. And I run into so many people too that they run into, they get depressed because they got fired, laid off, the company got sold. These various things happen, and it's a great chance. It's a great chance to try something, because I literally see very few that just leave. I do see some, and I've coached some of them that just walked out the door and started their own thing, but they're few.
So imagine when you went out there, you took the money. I said, okay, I'm going to use this as this opportunity that's been presented to me. I'm going to go out there, start my own thing. And often when you kind of go out there, there's a lot of enthusiasm. You've got a set of assumptions. You kind of go out there, you start doing the work, and then kind of reality kind of kicks in a little bit, and you start getting either feedback from the market or different things start to happen. And for a lot of people, that can be quite a testing time, because they've no longer got the thing that they once had, but they're not quite sure how to get to the place that they know that they want to get to. Did that happen in your case? And if so, how did you kind of cope through those kind of those dips?
Yeah, and I had started a company right before I left, unknowing that I was going to leave. It was this side business, so we kind of got into ramp up mode. But in reality, I feel like I was wandering in the desert for a while. I was discovering a couple of things, like it's so easy to make money flow, but not consistently. I mean, I could go out and do things, and it was just shockingly easy to go do a consulting contract or to write new business in our company and do some of these things. But I was getting that consistency and that clarity about what the heck am I doing? What am I going to sell? What services are we going to provide? That was a big struggle, and I find that with a lot of us that tapping into and understanding what the market wants to buy and where do you serve. Usually we overcomplicate it. Especially walking out of a large company, you're thinking, because your large company sells big complex things usually. And you're thinking you need to do something equivalent, but that's not usually what the market wants. They want solutions, and oftentimes simpler solutions are more valuable. And that took a long time to get that through my head.
And I imagine like someone like yourself that has the chops, has the experience. It'd be very easy just to kind of go into consulting thing and just kind of go through that. Pays very well, but you obviously chose a slightly different path. You wanted to build up something else that would help people in a different way, or help a larger number of people as well. What was the thing? Can you remember? Was there a first product or a first service that you kind of got out there? You went, okay, it's starting to take. I can feel this now.
Yeah, we have. I mean, I kind of went down a multiple winding road, and one of the things that did happen is I got drafted by the university to run this graduate program I'm now running, and in it, I had a faculty, our dean, the dean who helped me start it, was a venture capitalist, and was teaching the entrepreneurship courses, and they were some of the core courses. And the minute we started the program, he left. He called me and he said, I'm leaving, going to another university, and I'm going to do something else, which was a little devastating, but it was. So I'm sitting here stuck with the entrepreneurship courses, and he said, well, this is your bailiwick. You teach them, and so I did. And a lot of the things came through the process of trying, because I'm talking to corporate people, trying to teach them to think like companies. And so that was a struggle, because it was the first time I was trying to teach people how to really run a company. And we, in this program, we don't talk theory, we talk reality. And boy, I was beating my head against the wall trying to connect the dots for them, trying to make them realize you can't say your marketing department's going to do that. You have no marketing department. And over time it started to connect. And people started coming up to me and they said, what I really want, Dale, is out of corporate America. I really want out. What's the path out? And so I started trying to, walk them down that. Then the more I did, the more clear it became. I had to get down to kind of the simple brass tacks. But that was kind of the path that got me into doing a lot of what I'm doing today.
And is that person that's in corporate America, they may be doing very well at what they do, but they're feeling there's something niggling at them. This isn't right. I'm due to do something else. Where do you add the most value for them? Is it in just identifying exactly what that calling is, or is it around identifying the business and creating the business plan around that, or is it just purely on the execution and helping them with the coaching as they go through that process?
I would say it varies, but the reality is most of it comes right up front, is helping people figure out the what. It's utterly shocking. I've got a girl right now. She just emailed me. She's left corporate America just the other day, and she's like, I have no clue what to do. So here we are. They're very smart individuals, right, that are making great salaries inside large companies. They have no clue. Just absolutely no clue. And even when you ask them, what are your hobbies? What are the things you're interested in? What do people ask you for help with? I kind of go through this path of trying to help them discover what's that kind of thing that's so right there in front of your face. And it usually is right in front of them, and they can't identify it. And they're just like, they're literally brain numb. They're just like, I have nothing. I have nothing for you. And so a lot of our time is spent trying to just help them weave through that. And even when that clicks, when they're like, oh, now I know what I want to do, they go to the level of complexity that I've never seen before. They start, especially ex-developers and software people, they start writing code to develop websites and stuff like that. And there's point and click stuff out there you can do for either very cheap or nothing, and I'll show it to them. I'm sure you can appreciate this. I went in and showed them how to set up. There was a group of them, and I said, let me just sit down and show you how to set up a website. And I set up a WordPress site in front of them, in minutes. And they were in utter shock. Because these were savvy developers, but they knew what they knew from large company systems or large systems in large companies, but they didn't really know how easy some of the tools are to use. And so so, it's the figuring out what and the kind of getting them moving to execution pretty quickly. Yeah, seems to be what most of them need.
Does some of that come from in their roles that they've had up until that point? So much of things have moved towards specialism, going deeper and deeper and deeper in your particular speciality, where sometimes, especially among entrepreneurs, they may have a certain skill with marketing or design or whatever the thing is, but you see a lot of them being generalists, and they can get criticized for that. Jack of all trades is the criticism that a lot of entrepreneurs get. What do you actually do? That type of thing. But do you feel sometimes when you're working with these and coaching with these clients that their job has meant that they've pushed them so far down into the specialism thing, they've lost some of the magic of being a generalist?
Yeah, they really have, and that was my experience when I graduated as an electrical engineer. Which electrical engineer, your world's wide open. You can pretty much do anything. A few years later, I was a telecom engineer, and then a few years later, when I left the company, I was a telecom engineer and specializing in SS7 intelligent networks. Which if you look up that and you're like, and usually when I'm speaking to a group, I'll say that and say, is there anybody in this room that even have a clue what I just said? And there's always one, out of 200 people, there's one guy that's, because you look around and you realize the jobs doing what I'm really skilled at or trained at is they're few, and they look just like the job I have now. They may have a different paycheck, a different company name, but it's basically the same job. And you're so buried down in the thing, and you have this sense, if I go back and do anything else, I'm starting over again, which means I'm making nothing.
Which is scary.
And you feel that way. Yeah, it's scary. And if you feel that way, even if you take another corporate job, so if you go out in corporate America, you tend to have that same thing that you're so buried, and you don't even realize how buried you are in the details. So a lot of people I work with, they'll tell me what they do, and I'll say, I don't have a clue of anything you just said. Can you say that in English? And it takes about 4 times for me going through that before they can say, well, I develop code for banking. Okay, now I understand that. I mean, because there's, you're so caught in your corporate lingo, and you're so caught in things that you can't make common sense of what you're doing. And I find most people are caught something in that. They're such an expert that they can't stick their head out of the sand, if you will.
And can you tell listeners about a time in your life and your career where you worked on a project, worked in a business, and you gave it your heart and your soul, but for whatever reason, it just didn't work out like you'd hoped? And more importantly, what were the lessons that you took away from that experience?
When I was in the telecom world, I looked around me because it was awesome. The stuff we were doing was technically awesome. It was coming out of an engineering degree. I kind of ended up in management, and at one point in time, I ended up back in what we'd called our science and technology division, which just sounded cool, and we were doing some cool stuff. And I was looking around me at the guys and the gals next to me that loved this stuff. I mean, they ate it up. They were geniuses. But it wasn't that they were smarter than me. It was they just really were into it. They dug it. They would go home and read books and read the stuff. And so I never could keep up. And so I felt like a schmuck. And so I decided, well, I can do what those guys are doing. And so I started getting the books and reading them. And it was interesting, but it just wasn't me. I was faking it. And it took about, so I made this conscious effort to be in the know and to be as good as these guys were. And to, and I really did for about 3 weeks. It worked. And then I realized this just isn't me. I felt like I was living a lie, and I was faking, and I was faking it. And it was depressing, at that time, because this is where I was, and it made me feel like I'm just not good enough. I felt kind of like an idiot, and looking back, I realized, well, I was kind of an idiot because I was trying to do something that, although I was technically savvy, I had the ability to do it, I had no passion for it.
And so the lesson that you kind of took away from that experience, were you able to kind of like flip that? Where did you kind of go next within that? Did you ask to be move to a different place, or did you just find a different opportunity that you could use your talents best in?
Well, that was kind of my last leg in the company, as we were getting in, and I did find myself, before I bailed out of the company, doing some things where I just grabbed some projects that looked interesting to me. Nobody asked me to do them. It was just we found the need. Our director had this need, and I was like, hey, let me help you out. And suddenly I found myself with a team of people working for me in this undefined role, but we were serving a real need, and it was just one of those things. I just kind of followed my heart, listened to what I didn't realize at the time. I was listening to the big customer. He had a need that didn't fit anybody's role, and I just said, hey, let's chat. Let me see if I can help you. And so, it was very entrepreneurial in the sense I was listening to the customer, provided what they needed, pulled together the resources, even though I had no defined role in it. But it was there, even though it wasn't my perfect thing, it was so much closer to the passion that it was fun.
And can you tell, in this journey you've had from, corporate America to entrepreneurship to now helping other people move sometimes from corporate America into their own entrepreneurship, can you tell us about an insight or a light bulb moment in your life, a time where either you made a new distinction or something just kind of came to you and said, okay, this is the path I need to be going on. I need to make a change here.
I wish it was that. The problem I have with that statement is I'm just as blind as they are. I really, I can look at people and feel sorry for them and empathize or sympathize, whichever the right word there is, because I totally get it. I remember sitting, and I'm at the university. I'm helping all these guys in an entrepreneurship course, and by this time it was beginning to click, and we were starting 5 to 10 companies a year out of this program, and it was clicking with me, and I was having fun with that part. And some of these they went off and did venture capital deals. Some of these were solopreneurs and side jobs, side companies. It was all kind of a mixture of things. But I remember sitting down with my wife and telling her, Leah, I'm teaching these people to find their passion and to make it click, but I'm a hypocrite because I don't even know what mine is. And she just laughed and she said, dummy, that's it. You just described, and I was so blinded to what I was doing. It took somebody, that knew me well to kind of slap me over the head and say, you dummy.
It was right in front of you.
Yeah. And it's bizarre because that's true of most of us. We're so close to what actually works, we can't even see it.
And I know there's a great exercise that a lot of coaches do as well, where often when they start working with clients and they ask them to describe that client to describe their talents, and then they say, okay, now go to 5 people you work with and friends, and now have them describe what they think you're really, really good at, what your superpower is essentially. And that's often quite a revealing exercise, because the thing that person thinks that they're really good at, the thing that what other people value them for is sometimes different than what they thought. But it's just so close. It just feels like such a natural thing. You don't even think about doing it.
Yeah, you do. And it's usually this undefined, weird little, it's kind of falls between the niches. Yeah. I was working with a client the other day, and she was telling me, she started several companies and she can't figure out what it is. And so I was kind of asking her, she's not in corporate, so I was kind of asking her the same question. What is it that you just do? She says, I don't know. I just figure out how to make money. Every time if we have a car breakdown, I just figure out how to make money. If I can make money, we never have to borrow money. I can just make it happen. And I think as she said it, she realized that's her superpower. She knows how to do what so many other people don't. And I don't know, she's muddling through. What does that mean? What does it look like? But I don't even, in my view, I don't even know what the heck you call what she just described. And that's part of the problem is sometimes what do we call that? Yeah. We're so used to saying, well, he's an engineer, or he's a analyst, or he's a accountant. If we have a hard time defining ourselves, and we kind of feel bad about that, because then people are going to ask us, well, what do you do? Well, and we find ourselves stumbling. but it takes some time to get it to get that clarity.
And what's some of the best advice that you've ever received about, just living a creative life, living a happy life, enjoying the work that you do?
Several of my mastermind groups, there's some people that are really some of my best friends in my mastermind group. And one of them just, is constantly saying to me, it's not about money, it's about serving. Which sounds like, it's a great statement, but one day he just looks at me and he's just really trying to hammer this thing to me. And he's like, Dale, don't you understand when you serve people, the money flows? And again, there's nothing new. And that's probably a statement that I've made so many times to people. I'm always working on, what's going to make the money and how is this going to run and how is, and what he was trying to tell me, which I tell others, but he was telling me my own words and saying, Dale, you just have to serve people and the money will flow. And it kind of goes back to the old Zig Ziglar, if you serve enough people, it'll all work out. I forget how he quotes it, but and I find that true. I mean, you have to package things, you have to get things together, and you have to figure things out. But basically, you're helping people solve their problems. That, to me, and I think to most of us, that creates joy. It gives us energy because we're really helping people, and hey, it generates income, which is always wonderful.
And it's kind of beyond us. It's beyond the ego, beyond the I. You're doing something that's improving the lives of others. I remember a friend of mine who's the manager of Taylor Swift, the singer. And when Taylor first started kind of going on the road doing stuff, she asked him, said, "How do I sell 500,000 copies of an album? How do you do it?" And he said, "Well, this is how we're going to do it. We need to get you in front, like live in front of 500,000 people. That's how we need to impact the lives of 500,000 people. That's how you're going to sell 500,000 albums." And that's what they did. They just went on the road and they got in front, shopping malls, anywhere they could. They got in front of those 500,000 people, and then they started seeing the successes because they were adding value to so many people's lives as well. What's do you have an online resource or a tool or an app like Evernote that you absolutely love?
I'm a junkie for probably a couple of tools. Number one is Evernote. I'm probably in it every day. We use Slack for a lot of communications, especially in mastermind groups. And the other one I'm kind of somewhat of a junkie of is Nozbe. Is for my project management tool.
And Slack's a great. I use it a lot. We use it a lot within our company. But talk to me about how do you use it with mastermind groups? How have you been using that?
Well, it was actually one of our mastermind groups that my primary one that got me involved in it. We were just looking for a better tool. We had a Facebook group, and it was just, then we kind of went to Google Plus group, and it was just kind of clunky for what we were doing. And so we basically created a Slack account, and so it's got different things about accountability. We got different folders or whatever you call it in Slack, I forget, and it's our primary means of communication now, and it's just really us getting on, asking questions, or saying, "Hey, let me get on a chat with you," or something. But it gets us away from email and some of those other things. And the nice thing is you can go search it.
Yeah. No, it's a great tool. We'll put it on the show notes. People go to jamestaylor.me. Just type in Dale Callahan and you'll be able to get the links for some of these as we're talking about them. And if you could only recommend one record and one book to our listeners, what would they be?
One record?
Yeah, one record, one album. It could even be one single, and then one book.
Let's say one single. Wow, that's a tough. Let me go with the book. Probably the book that I find myself in a lot right now which is different, is a book called Bold, just Bold, by Peter Diamandis. And it's not so much a book for the typical startup entrepreneur, but it's really about bold thinking. And it's and it tends to be more tech, but it's mind expanding.
He's a fascinating guy as well. I think I read Abundance. I think that was one of his. I remember hearing him speak, and they were giving books to the delegates. And there's a guy that thinks big. He definitely goes bold.
He's a big, and that's really my thinking of that is it's just so much of a we think small. I think just as people in general, we tend to think small. And even though I'm not really in the tech space anymore, that book kind of makes you step back and say, listen, what am I thinking? Why am I thinking so small about things?
And what would the record be then? What's the either the song that gets you going or the
and I can't remember the song, but I'm a Christian. I listen to a lot of Christian artists. So Toby Mac is one of the guys that kind of just really pumps things up. He's kind of a upbeat, not really a rapper, but kind of a mixture of rapper and rock and stuff like that. So it's Toby Mac.
Cool. And we'll put those on the show notes as well. And one of the things I noticed on your site as well, which looked really interesting, is a course you do, which is called Networking for Introverts. And that's something we've spoken a lot about, folks who are introverts here on the show, how they can brainstorm, how they can work in teams. And you talk about, you have a course there just specifically on the networking side. Can you just talk a little bit about that before we finish up?
Yeah, because of the nature of, I tend to work with a lot of technical people. And just by definition, technical people tend to be introverted, and some of them extreme so. But the reality is, one of the truths that got hit to me is all opportunity in life comes through other people, which was hard for me because when I was in engineering school, I didn't like that. So me networking was when I first started doing it, was about as clumsy and awkward and used car salesman as you could get. And a friend of mine basically sat down and said, "Hey, Dale, here's how I start companies. I figure out who I want to be talking to, who's already doing, what do I want to do? Number two, who is already doing it? And then number three, I go talk to them." And I thought, and this guy had started multiple companies and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of revenue. And I thought, how stupid simple is that? But what turned out is I kind of experimented with that. It's really a networking formula. What I would do in a networking is I would go into a room and, 100 room trying to meet people. And, because I'm the introvert, I'm going to end up in the corner. And a lot of people are. But instead, you're realizing, and so this is what I was doing. I was having to teach this to all these engineers and people I was working with, is if you want to expand outside of your little company, you've got to network. And so here's the formula for doing it, is basically, find out who it is that you want to talk to, go connect to them and go ask them for advice, as opposed to, "Hey, I'm Dale, and let me sell you my product." Yeah. But instead, kind of get in and connect, ask people for advice, and it just has these amazing impacts. And you'll see that formula in what's the book? What Color's Your Parachute? The job finding book. Yep. He has he kind of does some similar things in there, and it just opened up my world to really realize I can, even though I don't like walking into a room blind, I can network with anybody. Now it's very easy. That's
great. And we'll put a link to that on the show notes as well. So let's imagine if you woke up tomorrow morning, had to start from scratch. So you have the tools of your trade, the knowledge that you've acquired over these years doing the work that you do, but you have no contacts, no one knows who you are. You have to restart. How would you restart?
I would start with the best if I can, just thinking through what is it I want to do in general. Who do I want to work with? What do I want to do? Who do I like being around? And then I would go get around these people and just start learning their needs. Asking them some of these silly, dumb questions, and the question I like, and the question I use in the Networking for Introverts course is, what keeps you awake at night? Until things kind of clicked with me. If I'm just starting from scratch, have no idea what to do, that's what I would be doing. I'm looking for kind of where their needs and those big pain points they have really light up my passion, where, man, I could help you do that. I really know how to do that. And I would be starting there and then trying to figure out, how can I help you right now? Not go build product X, but how could I get 20 of you in a room and just walk you through a solution? Let me pick networking. How can I get 20 of you in a room and teach you to network with power next week? And because that would allow me to modify, test my product idea, to generate some easy revenue. And that's where I would that's the kind of the fast path for me getting started. No matter what field I was in, no matter what I was doing, that's what I would be looking for.
Great. Well, Dale, it's been awesome having you on the show today. What's the best way for people to connect with you, learn more about your courses and your other products?
Well, obviously, I am on Facebook at just Dale Callahan, Facebook at Dale Callahan. There's a page there, and there's my direct email is just dale@dalecallahan.com. So it's pretty simple. I'm on Twitter too, but my return time on Twitter is not near as quick as email and Facebook.
Great. We'll put all those in the show. People go to jamestaylor.me, just type in Dale Callahan, and you'll get all the links that we've been speaking about on the show. Well, Dale, it's been a pleasure having you on today. I wish you all the best with the new year, the new academic year that's just about to start for all your students as well, and also with the launch of the new course that you've got coming up.
Okay. Thanks so much for having me, James.
Hey, James Taylor here again. And if you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.